tonight we're doing the welcome or why we need you in municipal politics. And tonight we're going to hear from 3 different councillors, as well as Kathleen Wynne, former premier. And we're going to talk a little bit. Last time we talked more about how councillors end up, or people that are engaged in municipal politics, how they found themselves in the role. For those of you that haven't seen the last webinar, I did send it to everybody that registered, but I'll send it again, the next 2 videos back to back. But I think what we heard from everybody last time was that municipal politics is very close to the day-to-day experience. As Kathleen said last time, it's you're right in people's livelihoods and in the next to the things that they care about the most, their children's schools, their parents' healthcare, nursing homes, parks, all these sort of things. And also, I think we busted the myth that there's a certain pedigree that's required. Of course, there's skills that are needed. You're going to need to be able to read and write and have decent public speaking and good listening skills. But at the end, what we kind of decided on was, from our councillors, was that really it's about a passion and a willingness to learn and to serve, and to do that with integrity is probably the most important thing. Because you have experience in your communities, and communities need your perspective. So whether you're supporting candidates, which about 40% of registrants have said that they will, or whether you're thinking about running, which is about 20% of registrants said that they will, or you're just here to learn more, we hope you'll get something out of tonight. Tonight we have Jonathan Scott, who's a councillor in Bradford, West Gwillimbury. He's also with the Rescue Lake Simcoe Coalition that is helping us with this initiative. We have Amy Corser from the city of Barrie, Councillor Anne-Marie Kungle from the city of Barrie as well, and of course, as I mentioned, Kathleen Wynne. We're going to do a discussion, a conversation with everyone, and then we'll do Q&A at the end. But to start off, Kathleen is going to address everybody with kind of the topic for tonight. Some thoughts about the topic of tonight is about what you need to know and where you kind of get started. Those are kind of what topics we're touching on tonight. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to you. Oh, you're on mute. Oh, you're still on mute. Oh, do you know what I think? Hold on here.
Yeah, sorry, it wasn't letting me unmute, but now it is.
Okay.
I'm good. Sorry about that. Yay, technology. So thanks everybody. Thanks for being here tonight. And I'm not going to talk long. I just want to make a couple of points. I actually wanted to start by following up on a couple of things that were noted last week, and I'll just go over what was said. One of them was that you really need to have a thick skin. What I want to talk about tonight is just some of the challenges, some of the steps that I think you need to take to actually be ready, not in terms of how to do fundraising, how to do some of those tactical things, but just some of the preparatory things that as individuals, I think people need to do, things that I needed to do. So drawn from my own experience. So last week, one of the things that was said was that you really need to have a thick skin, and in order to be able to do this, you have to develop that thick skin and kind of be impervious. The way I think about it is that you actually need to be a politician at any level, but particularly at the municipal level, because you are so close to the community, and when you go shopping, you're going to see people who you live with and who know exactly what you do. So I think that you need to have porous skin. So it needs to let in the criticisms and the comments so that you know what's going on, but at the same time it needs to be thick enough that you don't get debilitated by it. So that was the first thing. I always think about porous versus thick. And then the other thing was that there was a comment made last week about not taking things personally, that one of the ways to get through was to not take things personally. And I think that's true to the degree that one can do that. I will just say from my experience that sometimes that's very, very hard to do. And so one of the things I think emotionally and intellectually need to be prepared for is there will be things that are said that you will take personally. It's impossible as a human being not to be hurt by some of the things that get said. And I'll just give you a quick example. When our numbers were going down in 2017 and 2018, and it was clear that our government was in trouble, it was a 15-year-old government by the time we went into 2018. And I was asked in every scrum by the media what it felt like to be so disliked. What was it like not to be liked by people in the province in such a dramatic way? Well, it was impossible for me not to take that personally. Now, what I did have to do was haul myself up and find my sense of humor and think, well, what would the answer to that question be? Would it be, oh, well, it feels great. I get up in the morning and I love reading the poll numbers because it was such a ridiculous question. But in the first instance, it kind of goes into your heart. And, I think about when I ran as a school trustee, and there were in 1994, there were people standing in the gym at all candidates meetings with babies on their hips saying that because I was a lesbian, I had no business running for the school trustee to be a school trustee. So those things, they hurt, but they do, they give you a sense of what's going on in the community. You get an idea of where people are coming from, and it's part of kind of acclimatizing to the role. So I just wanted to note those couple of things. So I guess what I would say is there's an overall sort of emotional preparation that you have to make for going into this work. You have to be open about who you are from the start. There was absolutely no point in my trying to be anything other than what I was. I had worked on committees in the community. People knew I was an equity-seeking activist. And I used to talk about the sort of Norma Ray moment with my kids. I don't know if any of you have seen the movie Norma Ray, but at one point, she's a union activist and she sits down on the edge of her kid's bed and says, okay, they're going to say bad things about your mama, And I had to basically talk to my kids about what was going to happen. So any secrets that you've got that you think are not going to come out, they will. And so it's better to be open and honest with open those closet doors. So I just have a few steps that I think we all need to go through when we make the decision to run for office. I think what do I stand for and why do I want to do this? It's really, really important to sort that out, And sometimes we call it the elevator pitch. So because people will ask you, why are you going to do this? What do you want to do this for? And so knowing what your motivation is really important because people don't listen for long. They're only going to listen for a couple of minutes. And so you need to be able to encapsulate what it is you want to do. And then getting organized. And this can happen early. You get your core team. And I think I said last week that core team doesn't need to be huge. It needs to be, for me, it was women around a kitchen table. They were women from my church. They were women from my kids' classes. They were women who I had been on committees with. They were people who knew me, knew what I stood for. And that started the conversation. And then there were concentric circles that grew over the years as those networks grew. But starting with a small group of people who know you and who trust you is really, really important. And then knowing what your current profile is, how are you seen in the community? What do people know about you? Do they know anything about you? And if what they know about you is limited, then how do you get more of your message out? And that becomes, what's your relationship with the media and who are your volunteers and is there some place you can get money so that you can print literature and you can go online and you can do all that work to raise your profile. But the point I'm making there is your profile is important and knowing how you are seen or how you are not seen, that kind of self-examination is really important. And then the step that I think, obviously this is the most important one is doing the work. And for me, the most important work that a candidate does is that knocking on doors and going to where people are. There is nothing that will stand in for actually talking to people and letting people take your measure. When Jane's my partner, when Jane and I started in 1994, we couldn't get a campaign manager. Nobody wanted to touch us with a 10-foot pole. I wasn't a liberal. I wasn't an NDP. I wasn't conservative. I didn't have a partisan connection. I was running municipally. And so we said, well, I mean, it's not rocket science. There are this many streets in the riding. There are this many doors. We've got a map. Let's put it on the wall. And then you go out with your people and take your piece of literature and your picture and you go and knock on those doors. And we had a green marker and we went through, everywhere I'd been. We lost by 72 votes because we didn't have the knowledge. And this is my next point, and that is getting out the vote. So once you've identified those people, you got to get them out to vote, and that can be a hurdle. All of this can be a hurdle if you don't have the sort of plan in place, and if you don't have the people to help you. We didn't know, and we listened to bad advice. Somebody told us that the apartment dwellers on the west side of Eglinton Lawrence, which is where I was running for school trustee in Toronto, that, apartment people who lived in apartment buildings didn't work. That was BS. And if we had gone into those buildings, I probably would have found those 72 votes. But anyway, so careful who you listen to in terms of advice. Make sure they know what they're talking about, and then do the work, get the running shoes, go out and knock on doors. And of course, you have to have other people doing all those other things. But your job as the candidate is to connect with people. And then finally, I will just say this is kind of in the aftermath of the vote. You've gotten the vote out. Recognize that you need to have a plan B. Thousands of people run for office and not all of them win. And so my experience was that having lost first, I lost an election in 94, I lost a nomination in 99. So winning is a lot more fun than losing, but losing first is not the worst thing that can happen, because you find out whether you like it, you get a sense of what works for you, and then you can go at it again with renewed fervor the next time. So don't be afraid of losing. Obviously, you run to win, but have a plan B. When John Tory, who was the leader of the Conservatives, came in to run against me in 2007, we were pretty sure we were going to lose to him. The odds were not in our favor until right close to the election day. And so Jane and I had an escape plan. If we did lose, we were going to take a couple of months and do something. And I'm not saying you have to do that, but recognize that you need something to go back to, because it will be very hard. Your team will be upset. Obviously, your team will be elated if you win, but you have to have two speeches prepared for that election night. You have to have an acceptance speech and a thank you speech, and you have to have a gracious in defeat speech. That's just the reality. And then if you do win, which I hope you all do, you need to reach out to your opponents and congratulate them, because they're going to be hurting, they're going to be wounded, and their teams are going to be wounded. So those are just some of the steps that I think we go through, and I'm happy to answer questions. You've got great people to talk to you about the experience, and happy to be here. So thanks.
It was really good. I was on a roll. You missed it all. The webinar is over now. What I was going to say, picking up on what Kathleen had said in the Ready to Run guide, there is a section that helps you identify kind of who are people in your network, who are people you know. You may not know a campaign manager, but you might know somebody who's really good with detail work, and you might not know a fundraiser, but you know someone who can, put some basic math together and do a spreadsheet, right? Grandkids, whatever it happens to be. So please consider that. And then for people that are on here that are thinking about getting involved in their community but aren't interested in getting involved in politics. I've kind of got on a bit of this rant lately, and I apologize to all my panelists because no one's really here to listen to me. But I'm going to take my moment while I have it. Is I think people have gotten so used to the idea that politics is partisanship that they have ignored the importance of politics in your day-to-day life, whether it be how your hospital runs, whether your streets are clean and safe, whether your family members get help. Those are all an outlet of public concern. Politics is the outlet of your public concern. They can make those things happen for you when you get involved in it, whether you run or don't run. And I think I'm seeing a lot of groups who are too worried about getting involved in politics, don't want to get politics. I'm like, you don't want to get partisan perhaps, but you absolutely need to support councils and your representatives and give them good information about the issues you care about making sure that you get out the vote, as Kathleen said, talk to your supporters about how the decisions that are being made in your name are impacting issues you care about. That may not be considered politics, but that's what I consider politics. And so if you're coming from a group perspective, just really consider that collective action is really what's needed now. We've got a lot of issues to deal with, and I think when people say I'm not political, that's you making a stance. You may not be involved, but you're taking a position. So might as well get involved and help us all. So we've got Anne Marie, Amy, and John. And if you don't mind, Kathleen, I'm just going to take you off spotlight and I'll bring you back in a little bit, if that's okay. So I think you should all be able to unmute now because I've made you all co-hosts. That's great. So you heard Kathleen kind of go through some of the key points, and we're going to break some of those points down in a one by one. I'm going to start with Anne Marie for this one, and then we'll go Jonathan and then Amy. And so let's start at the beginning. Kathleen talked about her kitchen table. When you were running, Anne Marie, who were the most important people around you? You don't have to give names, but what were the functions? Was it a small team? A little, like, how did you get that team around you, and what roles did they do that were really important for you?
It was me. So it's very small. So my husband, works in Toronto, doesn't have roots. I have no immediate family in the city, in Barrie. And so this was kind of my idea, my audacious goal. And it really started with me starting to verbalize my intention. And then people started to say, "Are you serious? Like, are you actually serious?" They moved from "Why would you do that?" Into more of a, "Tell me how I can help." And so while it was just me door knocking at the beginning, getting myself ready started to become the kitchen table conversation. So, it was a gentleman at my local coffee shop that I went in every morning before work. And I just made kind of a casual conversation because we were talking politics. And I'm like, I'm thinking about running. And he pulled me aside and he said, "Are you serious?" And I said, "Yeah." And he's like, "What do you know about running?" And I said, "Nothing." Because I was not, tied, right? Nonpartisan, saw it as service, wasn't kind of, encouraged into this, wasn't prepared in any way for this, didn't have a plan. And he basically said, "Meet me back here next week, 8:00. We'll have a coffee." And he came with a package of material and we went right into strategy. Why do you want to run? How much money are you putting on the table? Is there incumbents? Like, if you want to get your voice at the table, think about different strategies about where you might want to run and know your why. So from there, though, it grew. So very, to not take up too much time, but I lost the first election. I ran in a ward that had 11 candidates, but did not have an incumbent. So didn't have anyone returning to try and get reelected. But then a year later, there was a by-election. And people who got to know me through my first election, even outside of the ward I was running in, they started to show up. And they came at me with, "Okay, we're doing a listening campaign. This is how you run one. This is who you need. And we're going to monitor social media. And we're going to be your door drop. And we're going to help you with signs." And they basically just gravitated to this kind of beautiful network of brand new people in my life that just saw and kind of understood my intention and felt, I think, a bit of a gravitational pull.
That's great. And it is important, like you said, to start telling people. It's just like when people are like, I might look for a new job, and I'm like, then tell, because I used to do job coaching once upon a lifetime ago. And I'd say, then you need to tell people you're looking for a job, talk to your network, because if they know, they're going to help. And so don't just keep it quiet. That's great. Jonathan, what about you? What did it look like for you?
Well, I first ran in a by-election about 6 months into COVID-19. And so it started with people had encouraged me to run. I'd actually been encouraging someone else to run. And when she decided she wouldn't, I put my name forward. And the nice thing about municipal politics is, of course, being your own person, but that also means our wards are small enough that you can actually knock on every door yourself. And so I set out to do that, managing my own social media because I wanted it to be in my voice. So the team around me was really to help with those pieces that the candidate can't easily do. So whether that was, my dad helping with lawn signs on the first day, or a buddy who's better at Excel and databases than I am, managing who said they're going to vote for me, who says they wanted a lawn sign, and tracking that. Uh, People who are social media savvy helping me film videos. And then as we ramped up, especially like Premier Wynne said, getting from that transition to I've knocked on everyone's doors. How do we get them out to vote? Um, Somewhat uniquely, especially given my political leanings, I had a bunch of conservative staffers say, "You guys really have 10 days of online voting? I've never seen that. We're going to come run your get out and vote operation because we have no idea how to run an online voting 10 days, day one." So they actually came up and helped knock on doors and get out the vote. And one of them is actually a Ford cabinet minister today. So that kind of funny dynamic of just it was interesting to them because they'd never seen online voting for 10 days back to back, and the dynamics of how to run a get out the vote operation in that scenario. So and then finally, finances. A friend who was an accountant opened the bank account and helped manage those things. So pretty small team, fewer than a dozen people probably all told in the first race. The second race, I had more people actually outdoor knocking with me. But I would say what I really just needed was people who could let me be the candidate and they could help with those logistics.
Great. Amy, what about you? We hear, small team with Anne Marie at the beginning got bigger. Jonathan seemed to have a pretty good team, but still small. What was your experience like?
Not the same. My experience was me and my next door neighbor. We did the Excel spreadsheets, we did the bank accounts, we did all the door knocking, thousands of doors. We had signs. My partner and my son helped with signs, but that's it. I We ran it very, very small. Uh, and not a lot of money. It was really a very much a more than grassroots. It was very individual. And I just say that I was nagged for years by my friends and people I know that I should run for office, and I always rolled my eyes and thought it was ridiculous. And then I guess I finally broke down and decided to go. And the nerves and trying to launch this and knock on that first door and all the fear that comes with that is paralyzing. And I tell the story of when the second door I knocked on, they asked for a sign. So it's not as overwhelming as you might think if you take it when you're stepping into it, doing it just the two of us. When you're stepping into it, it would seem like such a monster. But then when you get running, you're running. You got your momentum going. You can get like your boots on the ground. When we and I also I wasn't working, so that's really easy thing to do when you take this on as a full-time job. So, and a lot of people cannot do that, and I totally appreciate that. That's municipal politics. But I had a lot of support, moral support, but most of my friends are very entrepreneur professionals that really couldn't take the time, but they certainly gave me a lot of support.
Yeah, that's good. I see there's some questions going into the chat, which are good. We'll give that in the Q&A later. It's really interesting. This wasn't a question that I had thought about, and this may be too vulnerable, so it's fine. But I really enjoyed, Amy, when you said about one of your fears was that first door. I wonder if Anne Marie or Jonathan, you had a fear, like maybe it was your first debate or your first, like putting your name in, like what was that moment for you? I'll go to Jonathan and I'll go to Anne Marie. If unless you don't have one, Jonathan, I'll go to Anne
No, I
Marie.
do. And it's funny. I actually had breakfast with someone from a neighboring town today who wanted to run, and I'd been involved in politics and government, so I'd knocked on doors, and the first 5 doors, I think nobody was home, and then I got the first one, and I'd thought about what my elevator pitch was, and I just was, I froze because I wanted to say, here, I'm here on behalf of, but I wasn't. I was here on behalf of myself. So I sort of heard myself say, I'm Jonathan Scott. I'm running for council. I'll work hard on your behalf. And they went, yeah, you will. Okay, put up a lawn sign. And I went, is that all it took? Uh, but yeah, so I kind of froze because I was so used to doing it for somebody else.
Anne Marie, did you have a fear that was maybe different or the same as theirs with this whole process?
I did definitely procrastinated on like starting the door knocking side. So my husband, I'd go out and be like, "Oh, I'm door knocking today," and jazz myself up and get ready to go. And then I'd be like, "Oh, maybe I'll just like review material or answer emails about the campaign or polish my Facebook page," because there's always a lot of work to do. But you just need to start really because I mean, in the end, you think about, don't let a stranger be a stranger, and it's a neighbor for a neighbor. And so I think once you start, because it does feel like it's new and awkward and you're not sure how to present yourself. So talking out loud with people first was actually very helpful because you started to practice your why and you're spending a lot of time. So then it became more of an issue that I got into these really beautiful conversations. And then my husband's like, how many doors did you get to today? And I'm like, 5, because I spent hours at the door talking. But those are really beautiful moments because if you think about building ambassadors and people that will carry your message or talk to the next neighbor to say, oh yeah, she was here, she stopped by, and this is what I liked, or this is, what we talked about. So it all became really valuable information. But and then I loved campaigning because it's so different than council too, and it's a whole different strategy. But getting to know people and having a conversation and actually like your ear to the ground on what's real for them, I find it's really unique. One, about who's living in your city, what's happening with them and what's true for them on a day-to-day. And that just became, I just started really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about that door knocking thing. And even sometimes my kids have had to sell things. I'm like, you have to go up to the door. They're like, we don't want to. And I'm like, I can only imagine how that would feel, having to do it for yourself and something that's completely new. So thinking now about back to the people that you had around you, and it's going to be different for everyone, I'm quite sure. What was a role either that you found most impactful or you think other people should really consider being impactful in a campaign? So if you had one role to be like, if you don't know how to do this on your own, this is someone that I would really consider. We'll start with Jonathan, do Amy, and then Anne Marie.
I think the data person who's tracking who said they're going to vote for you, and especially in those final days, have they actually voted yet?
Okay. Amy, what about you? What did you and your neighbor find?
Okay. First, I really wanted to just make a short comment about the door knocking that really people need to understand is it is terrifying, but what you see on trolls online is not reality. When you knock on doors, you're not meeting the people that are the keyboard warriors. Like I like literally knocked on thousands of doors and I marked 5 as red flags. Like that I wouldn't go back. So in comparison to what you see online, don't let that terrify you. Don't let that be your reality. It's not.
And
But
online
again, could you
people back
sorry, I
down in
wanted
person.
pardon?
And online people will not do it in person
Oh no,
9 times out
not
of
at
10.
all. Nope. But I'm sorry, would you give me the question again? I just wanted to make that
Just
point.
what was your, no, that's fine. What was if you had to look back and reflect on a role that either would have been really impactful for you, or would be really impactful for someone else. Maybe it's moral support or maybe it's tactical. Jonathan said for him it was data. So what would you say for you?
I think the things that are time consuming for you is important to have somebody else to do. If like if you're spending hours and hours trying to figure out how to make a website, like don't do it. Like, find somebody. If you know that you don't have the skills to do something, then recruit somebody to help you out. Because there's lots of things that like for me personally, I know how to make a website and I used to do digital marketing. So that part for me wasn't an issue, but it was a lot of getting out the vote. And I had a couple of friends help with that. That final day, because it is a long period of time for voting. So we really focused on the last day. And when you run for office, I'm assuming it's all the same of all municipalities, but for ours, we get a list of everybody and it updates. So you know who's voted and who hasn't. So it's really handy. You get a big Excel spreadsheet that goes on forever and all the doors and all the names, all the addresses and all the names. So, and it'll update, tell you who's voted and who's not. So at the end, you're scrambling. You can't clone yourself three different ways to get people out. But that would be my answer. The one thing that you can't, that you're challenging you, get some help with it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Emery, close it out here. What do you think for the role?
I think having lost the first, won the by-election, so I ran 3 campaigns in 4 years. Probably the biggest difference that I changed: get your materials ready to go. Don't go empty-handed. So you're leaving something behind every time. Access is big, so find people that can get you into spaces like the apartment buildings. So, and then make sure you're making time, or people that are doing neighborhood meetings. So offer ways in which you will door knock, but also you can get together in groups of people, because I find those people are really impactful when they're making time and space for you. And if they then believe in you, they can really amplify your message. And then lastly, signs. I ran out of signs because people started asking they kind of turned up the switch in the last 2 weeks before voting, right? So everyone wanted a sign. But when I first did signs, it was find spaces that I put up very large signs, and I didn't go with a big budget, and I didn't take money from developers. So I really restricted how I saw my budget, which meant big signs, few of them. And that made a difference, because they're like, you're the one on the corner. And you're the one with the smile, or you're the one in health. So they read my material and they differentiated me from others because of my background that I shared my why with. And then people knew that they could call me. So the biggest piece was someone's got to monitor email and online, because people want to reach you and they want to get a hold of you. So I didn't track data around who was and wasn't going to vote. I still went to all the doors that had signs of other candidates, because what I heard was, I'm so glad you came, because there's 5 voters in this house and I didn't actually ask for that sign, and I don't know what to do with a sign that I don't know what came from. People are hesitant about touching signs. But then 2, you've got more than one voter in the house. So it was making sure, like, I just doubled down every house multiple times.
Mm-hmm. I think what I'm hearing from all of you thus far is, and I'm going to summarize it here, is run a campaign that's true to you. So if you need certain skills, know what your skills are, know where your skill gaps are. If you want to run it in a certain way on a certain platform with a certain why, stick to that. Don't try to be like somebody else. Don't try to run a campaign like someone else. So we're trying to get at each of your individual answers, knowing that that's not a template per se, but to allow people to hear the different approaches and to go, oh, I wonder what my approach would be in that. The one thing that we got some questions about after the webinar last time from people was this trepidation of, okay, I think I need some help. How do I ask people for help? Because what I think there is a bit of a myth as well for people that have never been in municipal politics. And I know, Amy, your experience was close to this. It was like, I have to do this all on my own. I'm a one-person machine, and I don't know how to ask people because I should just be able to do it on my own, kind of idea. So any of you, I'll just open up to anybody, feel free to go. Does anybody have any tips on that first, maybe it's not the first door knocking, but how do you talk to those first people to say, I think this is really what I want to do, and could you help me? Anybody?
Yeah, people will show up in different ways too. Like once they know your why and how you're going to present yourself, I think they know if you're a safe person that you're not a reputational risk either, right? Because people are, if they're going to say you should vote for this candidate or this candidate has something to say, then really some of the help started with just helping connect me to other residents. So it was helping to go to the door to say, did you know that she's a candidate? Did you know, have you read her information? Would you, and if they said, yeah, you know what, I'd really love to have a conversation, that's the data they took. So then I knew who to come back to the next day and where do I prioritize my time? And then who am I calling? And so that was, I think, most important about how to help for me. Like I had to learn a lot about what their intentions were too, right? So I had some lovely people that were willing to help, and I had some learnings about who I was saying yes to, right? So were they in it for certain reasons? Was it to amplify their own business? Did they actually, try to carry a different message with my candidacy that was for their own purposes? And then two, people who really want to support you, but might not have the resources to help in a way that you need. So I can have a ton of individuals that say I wanted to help, but when I was my own person, I couldn't be responsible for driving people to a neighborhood and picking them back up. Like I couldn't take myself away from the door. And so, especially with youth, it's find people who can help others who might need support about getting to the door or being able to have a role, but that you're not responsible for their day to day around how they are able to engage.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Anybody else want to add on to that? No?
Well, I wanted to say,
go ahead.
sorry, I wanted to say that oddly enough, it might not have been volunteers that helping, but I kind of weirdly had people who were complete strangers that I knocked on their door. And they would say, and I would be going out the next week, and somebody, or next whatever few days, somebody would say, "Oh no, we talked to the neighbor," or this somebody, like people were going around talking to people after they met me at the door and telling all their neighbors and friends. And so I was actually kind of getting some warm welcomes at doors because as I progressed, people started to hear about me and know my name. And I know that when, as you mentioned before about door knocking being like the bread and butter of a campaign, I know people that were, running ads on news sites and stuff that wasn't getting that kind of attention. And so it's you do find your people, I think, because once you I always say like just start and get your what you need in place to launch your campaign, but organically, so a lot of people will come to you, will like your message, and they will be gravitate towards you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Jonathan?
Well, they say that if you want to get somebody to like you, don't try and suck up to them, ask them to do you a favor. And it shows that you respect them enough to need something from them. And I think that's true in politics. So you just have to be comfortable asking. It's building a team, which can be its own kind of fun. And I would just say, if you're really uncomfortable picking up the phone or asking in person, send them a text message or an email.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There was a woman that used to work with us in the coalition, one of our coalition members, and she was a Toastmaster. If for those that don't know, it's an organization that helps people get better at public speaking. And one of the things that she had said to me before was not because it was advice for me, but just in conversations, was if you're really nervous about a certain conversation, it's totally okay to practice it. Hear yourself saying it out loud and build your confidence that way. It'll come much easier. Look at yourself in the mirror, make sure your posture's good, embody the confidence of being able to say it, even if it has to be 5 or 6 times to just hear those words. And that makes it easier. So I always remember that little thing. I don't, I'm gonna have to ask for more favors, Jonathan, to show you. now that I'm taking that piece of advice, I'm like, Jonathan told me you're gonna like me better if I ask you a favor. So that's how I'm gonna do it. Okay, we're gonna open up to Q&A after this, but I have one more question. So we've been talking a lot about how, and there's some more questions about how the campaign started, how it ran. Um, there's going to be people that are watching this now or in the future who are like, I wonder if, right? I'm not sure, but I think I got it. So, with someone who is thinking about what should they focus on first when they're like, okay, I think I'm ready. What was it? Well, it could be for what it was for you or what you think it might be for someone else. But we'll start with Amy, and then we'll go to Anne Marie and then Jonathan. So what would be, you've got this person who's like, okay, I think I'm ready, Amy. What do I do now beyond registering with the municipal clerk?
I'm seeking out actually women to run for office right now. But one of the things I think is to get out of your own way. Like, I think one of the biggest obstacles is yourself. Because, as I mentioned, I've asked for years to run for office, for different offices. And I always laughed at it and thought that it wasn't something that I was capable of doing, or always had those second thoughts. And so I always stopped myself. And then, but when I finally ran, you can do it. And I think a lot of procrastination and not getting your stuff together and putting your name in and all these things, I think it's a battle in your mind more than it is anything else to get actually, once you say you're doing, once you have your name in there, once you've made that statement, for me, it was almost like a switch that flipped, and then you're ready to go. So I think that the most important thing when you're getting started is to like trust the process and don't get in your own way.
Okay, Anne Marie.
I'd say start being visible. So be really mindful about being visible. Walk your dog in the ward that you're running in. Have people see you there, whether or not you're in the campaign yet or you're getting ready to run, you're getting your material ready. So show up at ball game, like find out where people gravitate in your ward, show up with an interest. Start thinking about who your stakeholders are, right? So my ward has the only Legion in the city. It has one of the rec centers. Get a membership to the rec center, like get to know staff there, get to know how things are operating, because you can already lead in then to your campaign with a bit more information to say, oh, I've been seeing this in the neighborhood, or this is a really beautiful park, or I've seen that this park is, right? So if you're not really embedded in your ward, if you're busy working and you've got other things happening, start to then be present and start to spend some time, cycle your ward, drive your ward, bird watching your work, but basically like understand what your assets are, what you want to showcase, and start taking those photos and videos and assets to say, here I am in the ward. This is what I'm seeing. So you can already share back like what you're picking up, what you like, what are gems. So people want to know you're accessible, and they want to know that you actually care about whether or not you live in the ward you run in, that you actually really care about that space and the dynamics and understand the day-to-day pieces, like where are the schools, what are safety issues, what are traffic issues, what are you picking up on that then people can say, oh, like she's in this, like she's not a single issue candidate, she's not in it for a building up to a provincial or federal level. She's actually in it because she cares and she knows what's happening in the ward.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense, because some of the successful councillors I've seen run in our township in Springwater, and they're fairly large wards, some of them, very different, are people that there's a familiarity. They're like, oh yeah, that S bend is a really bad corner. And there's really no light spec. It's like, and you're like, yes, you see it too. Like you can see that they're a part of the community, or at least they care about the community. So that's great. Jonathan?
Well, it's been said a few different ways, but I really do think getting started, you have to know why you're running, because it's not just about answering that kind of classic, why do you want the job question. It's really about showing people that you're well intended, and they can pick up a lot about who you are from why you're running. And then, I mean, who you are is also an equally important question to answer, and showing your credentials, or letting them picture you in the job. And then I actually think the final question that you have to answer in a campaign is what you're going to do and your platform. But that's almost less important than the first two. People want to know who you are and why you're running. And only if they trust you are they going to decide whether you can deliver on what you say you're going to do. And you might even get to a point where people think you're well intended and you have the right credentials and they disagree on some items in the platform and they're still going to vote for you because you don't have a party label on your back. They can actually say, I like this guy, I like this woman, I trust him or her, and even if I don't agree with them on everything, I'm going to understand that this is somebody who will make an informed decision and I can at least have trust in their integrity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is a much more human to human part of the municipal election. I'm going to ask Kathleen to come back. She can turn on her camera when she gets a chance, and then it'll be the five of us. Now, Adam put in some questions that we've gotten from registrants and participants and all kinds of different things. I don't think we're going to get through all of them because we only have 10 minutes. But I think that one of the ones I'd like to look at is what would a rough, now I'm just going to open this up to the floor. So not everybody has to answer it, but feel free to weigh in. So this is just open scrum. So you can come in on whatever question you want and don't get physical with each other. What's your, what would a rough budget for a first-time candidate look like? I know they vary a lot. It depends if you're urban or rural. It depends how big your ward is. There's a lot of variances for sure. But this question kind of came up a little bit last time as well. But just want to people have some.
I can kind of try and ding off a quick answer, which is you're going to have a spending limit, and then you're going to have a limit of what you can self-finance. And then if you raise more, you can spend more up to that limit. So whatever the limit is, I think that's the outer edge of your budget. Some expenses aren't subject to the cap, like fundraising and a few other things. So you can go over in a sense for the non relevant to the cap expenses. I would just say in a municipal race, lawn signs are still going to be one of your biggest expenses just because they're not cheap. And it's actually probably better to buy slightly more than you think you need because you'll get a better bulk rate. Literature, social media ads, especially where you can control them on Facebook and Instagram, your website and maybe some staff. But most of my campaigns were just north of 10 grand. So it's not a huge amount of money in the scheme of things, especially when you think a good riding campaign is probably 100 grand and a good provincial campaign is probably 15 million. So we're dealing with something that you can kind of wrap your hands around. And honestly, I think lawn signs are going to be one of the biggest expenses in that budget.
Well, I guess there goes my idea of premier, 15 mil, forget it. Just kidding. Just kidding. I know. Just trying to lighten the mood.
We'll back you, Margaret. You've got support here.
5 million from you.
Can I just make a comment? I think I'm going to look online, but I think you still, as a school trustee candidate, you can't issue tax receipts, right? So, it's a bit harder to raise money to run in a trustee campaign. But as I said last week, we really need good people in those trustee chairs, So it just means you need to find people who really believe in publicly funded education and believe that because it's under threat right now, we need good people there. So I just make that distinction. You guys, as city councillors, you can issue tax receipts, so people get a pretty decent rebate.
No, we can't. No,
you can't in Simcoe.
No.
The municipality has to agree to do it because it has to fund the difference.
Right.
Yeah. So
Right.
some
Because
do and some don't.
Toronto, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're in the same situation as trustees. It's just you have to find people who believe in you and are willing to give you money and not get a tax receipt, which is kind of ridiculous that the municipality doesn't allow it. But anyway, that is what it is.
And on that too, right? Then you get creative about like pass the hat, like what you can do within, but you need to know your financial controls in that municipal act component and work with your clerk. They're very good. And you do not want to be dealing with a complaint because of a misstep. Everything from signs to financials. So I think my first one was 5,000 because I decided to self-fund between my husband and I. Like, I had a budget, I planned the budget, I put it aside, and then whatever came in through friends and family was lovely. But I probably the most I got was maybe 200 because again, you don't get to issue tax receipts in our situation, and so it does add up over time, which is great. And while the signs are definitely expensive, I did large signs, and I really focused on colleagues that I knew had access to properties that still kind of fit where I could place them, but were prominent, right? Then from there, the biggest expense, and probably when you're going to walk into, because the postage has increased so much, is mail outs. And I did spend more in my next campaigns, more like 7 to 10, because I believed that I had to do 2 mail outs because people say they didn't get them, or you haven't been here, or I haven't heard about you. So I did door hangers and 2 mail outs, and that was quite expensive. But did find that I did a heavy, heavy print color material.
Mhm.
Yeah. But again,
All
it's
right.
really just about your approach to how you use your information.
Well, and then it goes a little bit back to what you were saying, Anne Marie, and kind of everybody's been touching on tonight, is that what is your ward? Like, what is your community like? Where do they hang out? Are they mostly in apartment buildings? Are they mostly rural? What is going to make a difference in your community? And if you don't know it, you might just think, oh, I'm going to run it like my friend did who lived in Toronto, and then find out, oh, it doesn't work the same. So if and I'm not talking about from experience, I'm talking from listening to all you more knowledgeable people about this. You're going to find yourself probably in a bit of trouble because it may not match what your actual
And if,
community needs.
and if I can ask, don't buy things that are just going to go to waste. So you might not want to like stuff doors. People do not like that. Don't wedge your material into a door. Your material does not want to become litter that people complain about or see. At some point in time, it starts to identify households where people are not home or on their own vacation. People don't like that. So I think be mindful about what you're leaving behind in mailboxes or door hangers. But, you can get to some doors, and in the last 2 weeks, you've got 3 or 4 things stuffed in people's door handles to side doors, and you can't even open the door to have a conversation with someone because the material is falling, and then you're touching other people's material. So it's interesting about dynamics. Like, some people just do business cards and they're sticking them in the doors, and that's less expensive. But I would just say, is that effective? So you need to understand how you're going to use your material and then how you're going to leave it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to ask this question from Natasha. She has geared this towards you, Kathleen, but I'm sure other people might have some thoughts on it. As a person from a marginalized community, how do you seek out people in your community that may be your voters? As a Black woman living in a rural community, I know that there are people in the community that is not exactly woke. LOL. She's thinking of something really good. uh, Hold on here. Is that?
Okay, sorry. It wasn't letting me unmute again. So to Natasha, um, what I found in when I first ran in 94, and I hadn't been out for very long. I came out in 1990. And I was involved with equity seeking organizations. I was part of a committee called Education Against Homophobia with the Toronto Board of Education at the time. I was involved in groups because I was kind of finding my way in the community. So I lived in an urban center, but I didn't live in the downtown. I lived in an area. In fact, people said to me I should move to Riverdale, which was downtown, because I lived in North Toronto. And I guess they were saying that because there were more lesbians in Riverdale. I mean, it was ridiculous. Um, but I found, Natasha, that the acceptance grew, but I started with people around me who were like-minded, who were open, and some who were from the LGBTQ plus community that kind of gave me strength. So I don't know where you are, but there are there are organizations that can support people who are trying to get into political life who are from marginalized communities, from different communities. So I would seek them out as a start.
I think it's, as you'd say, it's very difficult, I would imagine. Natasha happens to be one of my neighbors, actually. So I know exactly what she means about about some of the neighboring communities. But I can imagine that's only another additional barrier. Was that a barrier for you, Kathleen, before you ran?
It, I think it's each of us has a different experience. So, I lived with a lot of privilege, Margaret, and as a white middle class woman, I could pass. In fact, amusingly, after I left politics, I had feedback from some people in the LGBTQ community that I didn't look enough like a lesbian, that I didn't present enough as a lesbian. So you actually can't win one way or another. But a black woman has a different route because you can't pass as a white woman. You can't pass with that privilege if you're a black person. So I'm not going to equate the discrimination that I would have faced. So I think that finding supports, that's different for each person. But I want to go back to what somebody said about did you say it, Margaret, that knocking on doors, you will not meet the online warriors? You know,
That was Amy, yeah.
99.9% of the people who you encounter in this province, and I have knocked on doors all over the province. I was in politics for, nearly 30 years. And honestly, the number of times I had the door slammed in my face were very, very few. And people are basically decent. And when I said in my leadership speech, that I do not believe that the people of Ontario hold that prejudice in their hearts, whether it's racism or whether it is misogyny or whether it's homophobia. I think that people want to be open and they want to be thought of as open, but it can be scary to put yourself out there expecting that you may get that something nasty back in your face. But people one on one, that human connection actually mutes that, And so I hope, Natasha, that is your experience. And I really hope you throw your hat in the ring, whether it's in a community organization or whether it is into an election race.
We're going to do one final question. The ones that Adam had are great, and unfortunately, we just can't get to all of them. But hold on, what's this one? What I would like to ask each of you is why was getting over the hesitancy worth it? Whether if you did have hesitancy, what has made it worth it to you? Because sometimes we think about the cost of making a choice and we don't think about the cost of not making a choice. And whether your hesitancy was large or small or just a little bit of a blip, what was it that looking back and that you're like, wow, that made this worth it for me? So I'm going to go with Jonathan, then Amy, then Anne Marie, and I'll finish with Kathleen.
Well, I think at the risk of being corny, I love the job. I love doing it for the last 6.5 years, and I'm finishing out this term. I'm not running again, but I loved getting to advance these issues that I was passionate about, whether it be revitalizing the older end of town in Bradford or environmental protection or economic development, all the things that we were able to do to make parks or a youth center or other recreation facilities more accessible, both physically and equitably. It's great work and it's ground level work, and you can more often than not solve people's problems in the same week or within a couple of council meetings or within a couple of months. And so it's really tangible. We have a great community that's, Bradford's grown so much, but it's still a small town at heart. And getting to connect with people. My dad's the Presbyterian minister in town, so a lot of events just feel like the coffee after church, even if it's in somebody's home celebrating Eid, or in somebody's home celebrating Hanukkah, or at a completely non-religious event in the summer at a barbecue or a festival. You really do get welcomed into people's homes, into their family in a sense. And even the people who might be a little bit difficult, 9 times out of 10, as other people have said, they just want an explanation and to feel heard. And even if you don't solve their problem, but you can give them a good explanation for why this is the way things are. I found some of those dynamics to be the most rewarding, because you can actually see them, for lack of a better phrase, calming down in real time and saying, "Oh, okay, well, I get it." So it's good, fun, rewarding work. The pay is terrible, and it's worth every minute.
Okay, next.
For me personally, it was really, I'm not the same. I don't think I'm quite the same person I was before I ran. You grow, you stretch yourself, you experience so many things, you learn so many things, and I have a very hungry mind. So every day is different than the next. It's actually a really exciting thing to do. As boring politics is, I find it a very exciting thing to do. Um, like one day I was dealing with a hawk. The next day I'm dealing with coyotes. The next day I'm dealing with like there's going to be a rock concert in the park that wasn't registered. Like you're just there's always some gossip going on. I like being in the center of things. So it really suits it. It's the best thing I've ever done by far. And I don't know why I waited so long to run. But I'll say that I know that at the same time, there was a couple of candidates that ran in different areas, different wards than I did, and they lost. And they never regretted running. They would never, ever not run. They like, they're happy they lost. They're happy, they're thrilled. It was one of the best experiences of their lives just running. So, like, don't be afraid of the end. And I remember going to my election party and I had like the concession speech, but I didn't have a victory speech. So and there's as you, it's to run is actually like it's the best thing that I've done, and you help people every day and you get to connect with people every day. And as Jonathan mentioned, you're welcomed and you walk into rooms and people want to talk to you. And I find that people want to like you. Like people don't usually, they're upset about something as mentioned, but after a conversation and be authentic, and usually people will come around and understand even if they don't agree with you. It is a fantastic experience, and I'll keep going.
All right. Are you running again?
Yes.
Well, good luck on the trail. Anne Marie.
I guess I'll talk about it more from the lens of like running. So I hope if you're thinking about running, don't be dissuaded. If there's already people registered, like there was 11 of us in the first time I ran, there was 9 the second time I ran. The third time I ran, people said, "Oh, great, there's 3 women, but which brunette are you?" Right? So there's still things around how you show up and differentiate. But I'm pretty selfish in this. Like I actually got a lot out of running, even when I lost. So I felt more connected to my community. I actually was able to identify things that I didn't know were passions of mine and ways to get involved. I joined probably 3 or 4 different committees or boards after that, just through having conversations and bringing new people into my orbit. There's like so much wonderful, like just organic work and connections that are happening that you might not be aware of. So like the other 2 women in the third campaign, we had really beautiful relationships afterwards, right? So I think, enjoy the campaign, be part of the process. It's rewarding on all fronts. Winning is a really great outcome. Being then committed to 4 years of service in, a governance structure with different competing needs between your residents and the city, that's a whole different dynamic that you're going to live through and that you'll learn about, and there's people there to support you. But the campaign, if you are thinking about running, do it at least for the opportunity to kind of understand what it's like, find out the dynamics, meet new people in your life, and actually look at building bridges into things and new networks that you probably might not have ever encountered.
All right, Kathleen, you've got a storied career in this. What made it worth it for you? Try to think back, I
Well,
guess.
well,
Are you trustee or?
I think for a curious person, being in political life is just the best thing, because you learn so much, as has already been said. I think that being able to change people's lives in big and small ways, when people ask me what am I most proud of in terms of my political career? Yes, I was Minister of Education when we implemented full day kindergarten. Yes, we raised the minimum wage. Yes, we did a whole lot of things. But when I think about people's lives being changed because they came into my constituency office, or when I was a school trustee, I helped a mom with a child who had autism to find the services that they needed. Those were life-changing moments, And so those are the things that really made the journey worth it, for sure. I also think that two more things. I think that our impressions of human nature change as politicians. I think we have I'll speak for myself. I always believed that people were essentially good, but after years in politics, I believe that even more deeply, for all the nastiness online and all of that, that's not what my day-to-day experience was. And so I think it is a very optimistic thing to do, because people, as has already been said, people want to solve problems. They want to like each other. They want to find a way to be heard. And that, I think, is what democracy is about. So that makes me very optimistic. And the last thing I want to say, and I'm going to embarrass Jonathan here, but when we work particularly with young people in our teams, we are demonstrating, or we're giving them exposure to all of those things that we are dealing with. I've known Jonathan since I think he was 16, maybe he was 17, and he worked for me and we worked together. And, I am so proud of him. I'm so proud of the work that he's done, and I can see the impact he's had in the community. And I only say that, A, because I'm proud of Jonathan, but also because each one of you as a politician, whether you run and you don't win, you will have had a team. You will have had people whose lives you will have affected, because they'll do something that they never would have done if they hadn't been part of a political campaign. They'll learn they'll learn to be confident in situations that they wouldn't have been comfortable in before. They'll learn about how things work in a way that they wouldn't otherwise. And so you're changing their lives as well. And I think that's something that was part of what made it all worth it. I wouldn't change one thing about my political career for all the ups and downs. I wouldn't change anything. So I hope everybody who is interested will just throw your hat in the ring and enjoy the process.
Well, thank you for that, Kathleen. You almost had me. I was like, maybe I should just, I was like, maybe, no. For now, I'm having fun still. This is nothing against politics, but I'm having fun here. So thank you to all our panelists. For those that are with us tonight and those that are watching this, we are going to be meeting again on May 28th, same bat time at 7 p.m. And that webinar is going to be more focused on, okay, you've decided you want to do this. How do you bring politics into your life? How do you balance politics into your life, whether it be running a campaign or eventually on council? What are some things that you need to think about so that the barriers that might exist now what are those barriers, and how can we work on them? So the 28th is going to be our last one. And then we're going to probably have some, I'm going to call them care groups, because I can't think of anything off the top of my head that's better. Some of the registrants said they wanted to have small group discussions. So we might actually have smaller groups of those people that want to have those discussions. And that'll be probably in June, though, to kind of have more of a smaller, not one-on-one, but smaller group discussions with some of those people, answering some of the questions, or just letting them vent or share concerns and that sort of thing. So if you are available on the 28th, that's great. I know Ian said that there's a info election session in Barrie. Well, you can go to the Barrie one and you'll be recorded as long as you're there, but try to get other people to come to these as well, because we think that the information that has been provided here tonight and our session a week ago and what's coming up in 2 weeks is stuff that isn't always talked about, but needs to have a platform. Thank you to all of my panelists again for your time. For those of you that are going to be on the trail, which I guess is just you, Amy, good luck. And to the participants, we'll be sending a follow-up link with the webinar with our running ready to run guide. And as always, feel free to reach out, and thank you to everybody. So have a good night, everyone.